First thing on the rundown, Luka Dončić and Austin Reaves, and how that backcourt has elevated the Lakers in the last month. Second, are the Knicks starters playing too many minutes? And the Detroit Pistons deserve our respect. And finally, there's been so much madness in March in the NBA that I've got 7 top performers. Y'all ready? Let's go. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Control Room. I'm your host, Esrael Johannes. Now, I got a lot to get through in this episode, but first I want to mention that these stats are going to go through March 30th. Now, let's start with the Lakers backcourt of Luka Dončić and Austin Reaves. Since March 10th, Luka Dončić has averaged 30.6 points per game, 42.1% overall, 41.3% from 3, 9.1 rebounds per game, 8.1 assists per game, and 1.6 steals per game. He's one of 5 NBA players scoring 30 or more points per game since March 10th, including Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Ja Morant, and Paolo Banchero. This also includes his 45-point game in the loss to the Bucks on March 13th, and the 31-point game in the win over the Nuggets, scoring 21 points in the first quarter, a season high in any quarter. Luka's also had 6 30-point games in his last 10, including 5 double-doubles and 1 triple-double. Austin Reaves has scored 26.4 points per game since March 10th, averaging 50.8% overall and 36.7% from 3, including 5.5 rebounds per game, 6.5 assists per game, and 1.1 steals per game. Combined, this backcourt is scoring 57 points per game since March 10th, which is the highest scoring backcourt duo in the NBA, and the second highest scoring duo overall in the NBA behind Jokic and Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets with 57.6 points per game. And Luka and Austin Reaves are the only duo with 25 points per game each. Now, we know how good Luka Dončić is, but Austin Reaves has been getting better day by day, game by game, season by season. And so what's the next step for him? Let's start with Austin Reaves with and without Luka Dončić. Since February 10th, he's played 19 games with Luka Dončić, and he averages 20.7 points per game on 46.8% shooting, 36.4% from 3, 4.7 rebounds per game, 4.9 assists per game, and 0.7 steals per game. In the 2 games that he played without Luka, he scored an average of 34.5 points per game on 46.8% shooting, 33.3% from 3, 4.5 rebounds per game, 10 assists per game, and 3 steals per game. And in one of those games without Luka, he had a career-high 68 points created, which was March 14th at the Nuggets. Now, one thing that people might not have known about Austin Reaves is how well he can score. So let's look at how many 25-point and 30-point games he's had season by season. In Reaves' rookie season in 2021-22, he had 1 25-point game. The following season, he had 4. His third season, he had 6. This season, he has 17 25-point games. And then if you look at his 30-point games, in each of his first 3 seasons, Austin Reaves only had 1 30-point game. But this year, he's got 8 30-point games, including his career-high 45-point game February 8th against the Indiana Pacers. So we know Reaves can score. We know he can assist. We know he can make plays. What's next for him? This is something I noticed March 14th against the Denver Nuggets, where Reaves was just a bit late in timing his passes out of blitzes. And when he plays with Luka more often, then he's probably going to pick up on this a lot more. But what I was able to notice with Luka and how he adjusts to the blitz is that if you put 2 on the ball, Luka's going to be able to pass to the short roll, or he's going to know who's open, when they're open, and how much force he has to have on the ball, how much velocity he has to have on the pass in order for the ball to get to his teammate before the defense can make any sort of adjustment. And in that game, Austin had just a few, it wasn't too many, but just a few potential assists where he just needed to get the ball out faster out of the blitz, but he didn't. And so offensively, they were in a bit of a rut and had to reset. Now, as I mentioned, he's going to pick up on this more by playing with Luka. He already has this ability in terms of assisting. He's got 10 or more assists in 18 games in his career, Austin Reaves does, and 50 or more points created in 10 games in his career. So this might be more of a common occurrence over time as he develops as a guard. Now, a quick word on the Lakers' defense, because the defense since January 15th was not going to be sustainable, given their lack of size and also their amended schedule due to the wildfires that Los Angeles had suffered early in January. The road loss, though, to Chicago was, as James Worthy mentioned in the postgame show, boneheaded and careless. So you can fault them for that one. It has been a rough schedule for LA. It's not going to be easy. They've got 2 road games against the Oklahoma City Thunder coming up, as well as a road trip to Dallas right after one of those OKC games and in a back-to-back. And LA has been dealing with multiple back-to-backs in the last month. But as of right now, they sit in 3rd in the West. And as we get closer to solidifying these first-round matchups, we'll revisit how well the Lakers' defense is playing, whether or not it's about their energy versus their scheme. Other teams have some compelling storylines to approach, though. We've got the Mavericks. Why? Because I thought they'd be done. See, the last time I had an episode, I mentioned Kyrie Irving and how he plays during Ramadan. However, he tore his ACL in a game against the Sacramento Kings at home. And the way that it happened was that it seemed like it was caused by hyperextension after colliding his other knee with Jonas Valanciunas. So you're not going to have Kyrie for the rest of the season. You're probably not going to have Kyrie for the rest of the calendar year. And until he feels like himself, it might not be until the following spring. So maybe spring of 2026 before we see Kyrie Irving in full form again. The Mavs could have just laid down and died, especially with the injuries to Anthony Davis and then Daniel Gafford, as well as Derek Lively dealing with an issue with his foot/ankle. But all 3 of those guys are back now. And they played against Atlanta last night. So can the Mavericks actually make a bit of a run here? First, we have to see if they can hold their position in the play-in. Right now, they're in 9th, but they don't have the head-to-head tiebreaker with Sacramento or with Phoenix. So let's start there. The remaining schedule breakdown between first the Mavericks and the Suns. Now, these stats I was actually able to get this morning, so these are updated. The Mavs are shooting 55.1% effective field goal percentage, which is 13th in the NBA. They have a 14-24 record against teams that are 500 or better. And their strength of schedule remaining is a .544, which is the 9th hardest in the NBA. The Phoenix Suns, on the other hand, are shooting 56.4% effective field goal percentage, which is 5th. But they have a 12-26 record against teams that are 500 or better. And their strength of schedule remaining is a .615, which is the 2nd hardest schedule in the NBA. Now, of course, these teams might not end up being tied in the West. The Mavs are at 9th, the Suns are at 11th. But how about the Sacramento Kings? Because they're not that far behind the Mavericks. In fact, they were ahead of them for so long. So what would happen if Dallas and Sacramento were tied and it's just those 2? Let's start there. The Mavs have 0 head-to-head wins against Sacramento. Sacramento's got 3, so same situation. The Kings would jump the Mavericks if both teams were tied in the standings. And we've already gone through the Mavericks stats, so let's focus on the Kings. The Kings are shooting 54.6% effective field goal percentage, which is 16th in the NBA. Their record against 500 or better teams is 11-26, so even worse than Phoenix or Dallas. And their strength of schedule remaining is a .543, which is marginally right behind the Mavericks, the 10th hardest schedule in the NBA. So yes, the Mavericks are 9th, but will they stay there? Again, if you look at head-to-head, they don't have the tiebreaker between Sacramento or Phoenix, so they have to stay 1 game ahead of them in the standings. Now, things get a little tricky if all 3 teams are tied in the standings. If you have Dallas, Sacramento, and Phoenix all tied in the West, what's going to happen? Well, if you're a Mavericks fan, you're not going to like this. If all three teams finish with the same record, Sacramento is going to get the 9 seed, Phoenix will get the 10, and Dallas will get the 11. The reason why is because their combined head-to-head records favor Sacramento, and then Phoenix, and then Dallas. Sacramento has a 5-1 combined head-to-head record. Phoenix has a 4-3 record. Dallas has a 1-6 record. Now, something to keep in mind here is that Phoenix will play Sacramento on April 13th, which is the season finale. And if that game decides that all three of these teams are going to be tied when the season ends, then we're going to end up in this situation. But if that game decides that only Sacramento and Phoenix are tied and Dallas is not involved in that tiebreaker, well, now you're dealing with the Phoenix and Sacramento head-to-head record. And so Phoenix has to beat Sacramento in order for the head-to-head tiebreaker to be 2-2. If Sacramento beats Phoenix, Sacramento has the head-to-head 3-1, and they will jump Phoenix. But if Phoenix wins that game, and they end up with a 2-2 head-to-head record, the next tiebreaker between Phoenix and Sacramento is the division record. And Phoenix has a better division record at 10-5 if they win against Sacramento, and Sacramento's would be 4-11. So this race is nowhere close to being finished. So that's how crazy the Western Conference is. Next up, though, I got the East, including the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons. One question that's been going around lately is, are the Knicks starters playing too many minutes? Now, from what I've seen, it's not necessarily the average of minutes played per game. They do have more players at the top of that list than any other team. But there isn't much of a gap between them and the next most played player. For me, it's more of the concentration of points coming from the starters versus the bench, and how often the starters are being used in that regard. So the Knicks have a really high concentration of points coming from their starters this year, and I want to see where that ranks in NBA history. So, since 1982-83, when the starter bench designation was created, we're going to look at the highest percentage of points via starters in a season in NBA history. At the top, we have the 1986-87 Boston Celtics at 85%. In second, the 2004-2005 Phoenix Suns at 83.2%. That Suns team had Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, and Sean Marion. In third, this year's New York Knicks at 81.7%. In fourth, the 2012-2013 Portland Trail Blazers at 81%. That was Damian Lillard's rookie season, in which he played with LaMarcus Aldridge. And in fifth, the 1996-97 Atlanta Hawks at 81%. Now, outside of the 2012-2013 Portland Trail Blazers, the other four teams on this list, including this year's New York Knicks, have made the playoffs. The three teams that have actually finished their playoff run, because the Knicks obviously haven't started theirs yet, all lost to the eventual NBA champion. The 86-87 Celtics lost in the NBA Finals in 6 games to the Lakers. The 04-05 Suns lost the Western Conference Finals in 5 games to the San Antonio Spurs, who won the title in 05. And the 96-97 Atlanta Hawks made the Eastern semifinals, but lost in 5 games to the eventual champion Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan. The way that the East bracket is shaking out, New York is in third, and they would have to play the winner of the 2-7 seed in the second round, which I think will be Boston. So if Boston were to end up beating the New York Knicks and then going on to win the title, history would just repeat itself. So what does New York need to do to keep up with teams like Cleveland and like Boston, who are the title contenders in the Eastern Conference, that have a lot of depth, right? Because last year they dealt with an Indiana team that had contributors up and down the roster. So can the Knicks win without much production from their bench? Let's look at what the production from the bench actually is. The Knicks bench this season has a 48.2 offensive rating, which is 30th in the NBA. But their defensive rating is a 46.4. That is first in the NBA. Their net rating is 1.8, which is the 8th best net rating in the league. Their effective field goal percentage is at 55.2%, which is also 8th. And their plus minus is a 0.9, which is 10th in the NBA. One thing to keep in mind, though, through March 30th, they've only played 923 minutes, which is the fewest in the NBA by more than 100 minutes. So what's causing these problems? I wouldn't really say that they're problems on the defensive end, right? Obviously, they have the best defense for a bench unit in the league. But offensively, they're struggling. Why is that? They've been dealing with the loss of Jalen Brunson over the last several weeks. Now, that's not the antidote to their issues, but by bringing back Jalen Brunson, you now have another body that whoever's in one person from the current starting lineup can move back down to the bench and elevate the bench with that person's play, depending on who it is. So this season, let's look at the Knicks with and without Jalen Brunson, who has not played since March 6th at Los Angeles against the Lakers, where he scored 39 points. This season with Jalen Brunson, through March 30th, the Knicks have a 39-22 record, scoring 117.2 points per game on 48.9% shooting overall, 36.7% from three, a 115.9 offensive rating, 112.7 defensive rating, and a 3.2 net rating. Without Jalen Brunson, they're 8-5 this season, scoring 112.5 points per game on 48.3% shooting overall, 37.6% from three, a 112.9 offensive rating, a 108.1 defensive rating, and a 4.8 net rating. And because these numbers are similar, having Jalen Brunson back means that, like I said before, you have an extra body to alleviate the burden of the current starters. Also, something to keep in mind, the Knicks are 17-9 in the clutch, which is third best in the NBA. And Jalen Brunson leads the league in clutch scoring at 6 points per game. So if New York is going to use their starters a lot, well, how well are their starters playing? Let's look at Karl-Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges. In their last 12 games entering March 31st, Karl-Anthony Towns is averaging 24.4 points per game on 50% shooting and 45% from three. OG Anunoby is scoring 22.8 points per game on 47% shooting, 38.3% from three. And Mikal Bridges is scoring 22.2 points per game on 55% shooting overall and 37% from three. This is the only trio to each average 22 points per game since March 7th. And so the bulk of the offensive production will have to come from them until Jalen Brunson returns. Now, why is Tom Thibodeau, the head coach of the New York Knicks, not using his bench as much as people would like him to? Well, one, because he's done it this way his entire career. But two, his bench isn't actually as deep as people would think. The people that we're asking him to lean on are Miles McBride, Mitchell Robinson, Cameron Payne, Precious Achiuwa. They can all provide a contribution here and there, including Mitchell Robinson, who had been a starter for the Knicks earlier. But right now, this depth isn't really there in terms of health because McBride is out, Cameron Payne is out, Mitchell Robinson is day-to-day. So they're not even healthy. That's number one. But number two, as a unit, they're not really moving offensively. They're not scoring the basketball, right? So their offensive rating, that is data that's extrapolated from whatever they give us to 100 possessions per game. So they are not a good bench unit offensively when it comes to scoring, at least. Now, this is going to be a problem against teams like Boston, like Cleveland, and even, again, like Indiana, because that depth, coaches tend to have a shorter leash in the playoffs. They don't run 10, 12 deep rotations. But because those bodies are fresh, every now and then, sometimes it's going to take a bench player. And the Knicks are going to need to get that from one of these guys that I mentioned. And they're all going to have to be healthy for the Knicks to have a solid run. So now that we've taken care of the Knicks, let's move on to the story of the NBA. The Detroit Pistons have the greatest turnaround I've ever seen from an NBA team. In 2023-24, the Detroit Pistons had only 14 wins and the worst record in the NBA. They scored only 109.9 points per game, which was 27th, shot 46.3% overall, which was 24th. 34.8% from three, which was 26th. Had a minus 9.1 plus minus, which was 28th. A 109 offensive rating at 27th. A 118 defensive rating at 25th. And a minus 9 net rating, which was 29th. This year, they have 42 wins, scoring 115.5 points per game, which is 11th. 47.7% shooting overall, which is 9th. 36.3% shooting from three, which is 15th. A plus minus of 2.4, which is 11th. An offensive rating of 114.6, which is 12th. A defensive rating of 112, which is 9th. And a net rating of 2.6, which is 11th. The Detroit Pistons have tripled their win total from last year. This is the first time in NBA history that a team has tripled their win total from the previous season. Now, how did the Detroit Pistons have this great of a turnaround? Of course, they let go of Monty Williams last year, and they brought in JB Bickerstaff, who was let go from Cleveland last year. But it all starts at the point guard, Cade Cunningham, who, as he said last year, there's no way we're this bad. And sure enough, he's led them as far as they've come this year. Last season, he averaged 22.7 points per game on 44.9% shooting, 35.5% from three, 4.3 rebounds per game, 7.5 assists per game, averaged 1.9 fast break points per game, and 9.1 paint points per game. This year, he's at 25.7 points per game on 46.2% shooting overall, 35.4% from three, 6.1 rebounds per game, 9.2 assists per game, 2.7 fast break points per game, and 12.5 paint points per game. That is 10th in the NBA and second among guards, behind only Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So the improvement of Cade Cunningham has led him to becoming an all-star this season. That's number one. Number two, the Pistons have been able to play so well with him that they elevate their game, especially in terms of speed and pace and their paint presence. Again, like I said, he's second leading guard in paint points per game. So, what are the Pistons doing with and without Cade Cunningham this year? With Cade Cunningham, through March 30th, they have a 37-29 win-loss record at 115.7 points per game on 47.9% shooting overall, 19.4 fast break points per game, 53.4 paint points per game, a 111.9 offensive rating, a 109 defensive rating, and a 2.9 net rating. Without Cade Cunningham, they have a 5-4 record, 114.3 points per game on 46.1% shooting overall, 16.3 fast break points per game, 49.3 paint points per game, a 113.9 offensive rating, a 115.7 defensive rating, and a minus 1.8 net rating. The net rating drops by 4.7 when they don't have Cade Cunningham. That's how much of an effect that he has on this team. Now, it's not just him, though, that's playing well, because some of these other Pistons got some motion. Let's look at 5 of the impact players from this Pistons roster. Starting with Malik Beasley. He's scoring 16.3 points per game on 42.3% shooting from three. That leads the team. Tobias Harris is averaging 13.8 points per game on 47.2% shooting and averaging 1 steal per game. Jalen Duren is averaging 11.7 points per game on 69.6% shooting, and he leads the team with 10.2 rebounds per game. Tim Hardaway Jr. has also been effective, scoring 10.7 points per game on 36.5% shooting from three. And then All-Star Thompson has 9.8 points per game, shooting 54.1% overall, grabbing 4.9 rebounds per game, and he leads the team with 1.7 steals per game. And then I should mention that Dennis Schroeder, who was a late acquisition after he was traded from Brooklyn to Golden State and then ended up in Detroit this year, he's played in 22 games through March 30th and scored 10.7 points per game and is second on the team with 5.4 assists per game. Now keep in mind, without Cade and Tobias Harris, the Detroit Pistons did just beat this Cavaliers team. So this Pistons team absolutely deserves our respect. They're going to be a tough out for anybody in the NBA playoffs. Now let's see where they are in the Eastern Conference standings. These standings have been updated through April 2nd. Cleveland still leads the way at 61-15, and they've clinched a playoff spot. The next three teams to clinch a playoff spot are Boston, New York, and Indiana, respectively. And right now, Detroit, Milwaukee, Orlando, Atlanta, and Miami have all clinched a postseason berth, so they can fall anywhere within the playoff range or the play-in tournament. And then in 10th, Chicago has clinched a play-in berth, so they will not be mathematically eliminated from postseason contention. However, Toronto, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Charlotte, and Washington have all been eliminated. And so we know who our top 10 teams are going to be in the Eastern Conference. From where the East standings look right now, the top 6 are probably going to be set. We're probably going to see Detroit and Milwaukee finish off the top 6, which leaves Orlando, Atlanta, and Miami still jockeying for the play-in seeding. Now, those three teams in the play-in, Orlando, Atlanta, Miami, are within a game and a half of each other. Meanwhile, Detroit and Milwaukee are at least 5 games ahead of the 7 seed. And so all that's left is really about positioning. Who's going to finish with the 5? Who's going to finish with the 6? With Detroit being 3 games behind Indiana, and Indiana surging as of late, Indiana's probably going to be at that 4 spot. New York is probably going to stay at 3. Boston's going to probably stay at 2. And Cleveland's probably going to win the Eastern Conference. Now let's transition to the West standings, also updated through April 2nd. Oklahoma City has clinched not only a playoff berth, but the Western Conference. And they're still trying to get the number 1 overall seed in the NBA to have home court in the NBA Finals. They have tied their franchise record with 64 wins this season. Houston is the next team to clinch a playoff berth. They are 14.5 games behind OKC. Everyone else has not clinched a playoff spot, a top 6 spot, but they're in the play-in conversation, or at least they're in the postseason conversation. Right now in 3rd, you have the Los Angeles Lakers, 3 games behind Houston. Behind LA, in terms of win percentage, is Denver. Denver's in 4th, also 17.5 games back of OKC, 3 games back of Houston. Golden State is currently in 5th and a half game ahead of Minnesota, who's in 6th. Now, Minnesota, the LA Clippers, and the Memphis Grizzlies are all tied at 44-32 and 20 games back of OKC. So as of right now, that's how the seeding is going. So where the West is right now, it's probably not going to be the same way tomorrow or the day after or the day after. But this is a race to keep in mind. In 9th, the Dallas Mavericks are at 38-39, only a game and a half ahead of the Sacramento Kings, who are at 36-40, who are 1 game ahead of the Phoenix Suns, who are 35-41. And then 2 games behind Phoenix is Portland at 33-43. And then still in mathematical contention, but not in reality, the San Antonio Spurs are 32-44, 32 games back. And the New Orleans Pelicans and Utah Jazz are eliminated. So by no means is this race over, as I've said multiple times in this episode. We've got a long way to go, and we only have about 10 days before the season ends. So it's going to get wild. Get ready. All right. Now, there's been so much madness in March, not only in the college level, but in the NBA, that I have 7 top performers. That is coming up next. If you've made it this far, welcome to the postgame. I've got 7 top performers for you. Let's start with LeBron James, who crossed the 50,000 point mark in his career when you combine the regular season and the playoffs. LeBron James is sitting in first at 50,198 points. In second, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at 44,149. In third, Karl Malone at 41,689. In fourth, Kobe Bryant at 39,283. In fifth, Michael Jordan at 38,279. And in 6th, Kevin Durant at 35,556. Next, we have Stephen Curry, who reached the 4,000 career three-point field goals made mark. Steph has 4,029 threes in his career after he dropped 12 threes on Memphis. James Harden is in second with 3,158. Ray Allen is in third at 2,973. Damian Lillard is in fourth at 2,804. In fifth is Klay Thompson with 2,690. And in sixth, Reggie Miller is at 2,560. By the way, LeBron James is in seventh with 2,547, so he's getting close. Now let's continue with Steph Curry because he had a crazy road trip at the beginning of March. He averaged 34.8 points per game on 55.1% shooting overall, 51.6% from three, 94.4% from the free throw line, 7.8 assists per game, and 1.2 steals per game. This includes his 56-point game and his 40-point game. Now, why did the Warriors go 4-1? How did they lose a game? Well, it's because of a guy named Quentin Grimes, former Maverick, who is with the Philadelphia 76ers right now. In his 14 games in March, he's averaged 26.6 points per game on 50.4% shooting overall, 40.3% from three, 4.7 rebounds per game, 4.9 assists per game, and 1.9 steals per game. That was his career high in points per game, field goals made, which was 9.5, and steals per game in any calendar month. And it includes his career high 44-point game and 46-point game. Now, how did he not win Eastern Conference Player of the Month? Well, it's because somebody else had a career high 44-point game, and that goes to Kobe White of the Chicago Bulls. March 6th at Orlando, he scored a career high 44 points on a career high 16 of 28, which is 57.1%. 7 of 15 from three, 46.7%. 5 of 6 from the free throw line, 83.3%. And 5 rebounds and 2 steals. His 7 threes made were also tied for the 4th most in his career. Next, we have a rookie in Alex Sarr. Yes, a Washington Wizard made this list. March 15th at the Nuggets. In a win, Alex Sarr scored a career high 34 points. Shot 12 of 28, 42.9% overall. 5 of 9 from 3, 55.6%. A perfect 5 of 5 from the free throw line. 6 rebounds and 5 assists. This was a career high in points, field goals made, and 3-point field goals made. Tied his career high in free throws made and assists. And it was his first career game with 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. Then, Sandro Mamukelashvili from the San Antonio Spurs. Yes, he's making an appearance too. March 19th against the New York Knicks. Mamu had 34 points on 13 of 14 shooting, 92.9%. A perfect 7 of 7 from 3, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and did it in 19 minutes. That's a career high points, field goals made, and 3-point field goals made. And it's the most points scored in under 20 minutes in NBA history. This is for any player who did not reach 20 minutes in a game. But we're not ending there. Because Nikola Jokic, March 7th against the Philadelphia 76ers, because duh, had the first 30-20-20 triple-double in NBA history. 31 points, 13 of 22 shooting overall, 59.1%, 3 of 7 from 3, 42.9%, 21 rebounds, a career-high 22 assists, and 3 steals. Now that's what I call March Madness in the NBA. In the next episode, we're going to look at Luka Dončić against the Dallas Mavericks, as well as the run that the Pacers and the Bulls have had, as well as the 6th seed race in the West. Now let's look at the NBA upcoming schedule. On Friday, April 4th, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Houston Rockets will play at 8 p.m. Eastern on League Pass. Yes, I did choose a League Pass game. I think this one will be compelling. And the Denver Nuggets and Golden State Warriors will play at 10 p.m. Eastern on NBA TV. And on Saturday, April 5th, the Memphis Grizzlies will play the Detroit Pistons at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBA TV. And the Mavericks and the Clippers will play at 10:30 p.m. Eastern on Mavs TV. So that does it for me. Thanks for being here. Make sure to download this episode, like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Let's hit the rollout.